faithfully delivering value and interpreting great books from around the world. And hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today I'm going to interpret for you this play by Italian playwright Dario Fo, Accidental Death of an Anarchist. In October 1997, the Swedish Academy announced awarding the Nobel Prize in Literature to an Italian playwright. As soon as the news about Dario Fo spread, Italy was in an uproar, with people arguing nonstop. As a famous playwright and outstanding actor, Dario Fo was loved by some but hated by many. Why? Because Dario Fo's plays always mocked the authorities, exposing their embarrassments to the audience. His works thrilled viewers, but disgusted and even scared those in power. So he was hailed as the people's jester. Dario Fo's most famous masterpiece is the one we're discussing today, Accidental Death of an Anarchist. It's a political satire that quickly spread worldwide after its debut, performed in over 40 countries, like in Chile under Pinochet's dictatorship and South Africa under apartheid. Famous experimental director Ming Jing also staged it in China, causing a big sensation. So before we dive into this play, let's first look at the real events behind it. In December 1969, a bomb exploded at the Agricultural Bank in downtown Milan, Italy, causing nationwide shock. 16 died instantly, and nearly 100 were injured. This incident drew widespread attention, and the police quickly launched an investigation. Soon, they announced that an anarchist group was responsible. They summoned several anarchists for questioning, but 3 days later, another major news broke. An anarchist named Pinelli fell to his death at a police station, sparking public outcry again. Police claimed Pinelli jumped from the 4th floor to his death, and later the court ruled it an accidental death. But people weren't satisfied, because Pinelli had obvious neck injuries. Clearly, his death was suspicious. Back then, Italy's politics were chaotic, with the government controlled by the right wing, while left-wing parties frequently challenged the regime. And to retaliate, neo-Nazis within the right-wing forces staged terrorist events and framed left-wing parties and anarchists, accusing them of disrupting order and endangering security. So in this case, people had every reason to suspect the bombing was again the work of neo-Nazis. And the police colluded with neo-Nazis framing anarchists for Pinelli's murder amidst all this chaos. On December 10th, 1970, the first anniversary of Pinelli's death, a new play premiered in Milan. This was Dario Fo's Accidental Death of an Anarchist. This play was precisely based on the real events surrounding Pinelli's death. In the play, a quick-witted madman walks into a police station, creating comedic farces that expose the police, courts, and government's various misdeeds. The play ran for 300 performances in just 2 seasons, with a total audience of over 300,000. And for each performance, Dario Fo would revise the script, adding new content and lines based on the progress of lawsuits and investigations. At the time, left-wing media were sued by the police because they insisted that the police had murdered Pinelli. Dario Fo, knowing full well he could also be sued, still firmly stood by the left-wing stance and continued the performances. That ultimately made the play a globally renowned masterpiece. The entire play is divided into 4 parts. The main setting is the police station from the Pinelli incident, and the central character is a madman who impersonates a judge, walks into the police station, and tricks them into fabricating absurd stories. Finally, as the bubble grows bigger and bigger, he exposes the lies in front of reporters, proving that the police were shielding the neo-Nazis. The real mastermind behind the case was the right-wing government. Well, let's first look at part 1 of the play. It opens in a police station building where an officer named Bertozzo is interrogating the madman. Turns out, this madman had previously impersonated a university lecturer, a sniper team leader, a shipbuilding engineer, and so on. Recently, he even pretended to be a psychiatrist treating patients and was eventually caught and brought to the police station for questioning. During the interrogation, Bertozzo was surprised to find that the madman was also well versed in law. He asked the madman, "Have you ever impersonated a judge?" The madman replied, "Not yet, but I must impersonate one once. Judges have the best job. In other professions, people have to retire in their 50s or 60s. But when judges reach that age, their careers are just hitting their prime. The older and more senile judges get, the more their intellect declines, the more people want to entrust them with important duties." Dario uses the madman to sharply satirize the court's corruption. Bertozzo was left speechless and just had to shoo the madman away quickly. But he didn't expect that while he was out at a meeting, the madman sneaked back into the room and opened the Pinelli death case file. Bertozzo! Even more unexpectedly, the police chief upstairs just happened to call, saying a judge was coming to review the case files. The madman answered the phone and deliberately tattled on Bertozzo to the chief, claiming Bertozzo mocked him, which sent the chief into a rage, vowing to beat Bertozzo up. When the chief came downstairs and bumped into Bertozzo returning from the meeting, he threw a punch and knocked Bertozzo out cold. Just like that, Bertozzo, the only officer who knew the madman's true identity, was temporarily out of the picture. Meanwhile, the madman disguised himself as a judge and boldly walked into the room where Pinelli fell, kicking off the real show. Entering part 2, the madman, now as a judge, directly accuses the police of dereliction of duty in the Pinelli falling incident. As the chief walked in with 2 officers, the madman, pretending to be a judge, stood facing the window where Pinelli jumped. He put on a serious face and introduced himself as the chief consultant of the Supreme Court. The chief heard this and immediately acted all respectful. Then the madman opened the case file, sticking each page on the wall and reading the transcripts word by word. He emphasized reading the chief's testimony. Around midnight, the anarchist suddenly had a manic episode, jumped out the window, and shattered on the ground. After that, the madman said, "Forensically speaking, mania is caused by anxiety and fear." So now, let's hear how this anarchist got so anxious and scared. So the madman started questioning, and the chief and officers followed along, gradually revealing the interrogation details. Turns out, the police had no solid evidence for arresting Pinelli. They just linked it to some earlier railway bombings, figuring it was the same group. They also found Pinelli was the only anarchist among the railway workers, so they pinned him as a prime suspect and hauled him in without question. Later, Pinelli provided an alibi, but the police rudely dismissed it all and illegally detained him beyond the time limit. While in custody, the police deceived Pinelli again, claiming another anarchist had confessed, making him even more anxious and fearful. But Pinelli never confessed. To wrap up the case quickly, the police fabricated his confession. So Pinelli's death was conveniently explained as suicide due to guilt. The madman said, "You're directly responsible for Pinelli's death because your lies made him anxious and fearful. At least that's inciting suicide." He scolded the chief and officers, "You not only deceive suspects, but also the media and public. Your dereliction of duty is way too severe. If I were you, I'd jump out this 4th floor window." As he spoke, the madman pushed these trembling men toward the window. The chief and officers were completely toyed with by him. Terrified and thinking they were doomed, they blamed the government, saying it deliberately created terrorist events to spread fear and tighten social control. As a result, the unlucky police station was used as a pawn. They complained, "If it weren't for this, we wouldn't need to make random arrests. We caused a death and ended up in hot water. We obey the government, but if the public's unhappy, we'll be sacrificed by them." Oh well, who knows? After hearing this, the madman judge suddenly did a 280, putting on a friendly face and claiming he was just scaring them earlier. Actually, he was sent by the government to assist the police. The madman reassured the chief, I represent the government and will work with you to figure out how to explain this to the media and public. She said, we can prove Pinelli didn't have mania during interrogation. He jumped afterward. So the madman vividly acted out the details. During interrogation, Pinelli was desperate, but the chief patted his shoulder, the officer patted his face to comfort him, and encouraged him by saying, anarchism will never die. At this point, the officers couldn't stand listening any longer. They protested, oh dear, this story is too absurd. But the madman said, the public will love it. He started leading a solemn anarchist song. As soon as the chief and officers heard it, as if possessed, they joined in. The play's absurd atmosphere thickened. The curtains slowly closed and reopened, yet their singing continued. Here the story moves into part 3 with the song. The madman, still posing as an ally to the police, advises them on the anarchist's fatal fall. But his ideas are always too wild, each suggestion more absurd than the last. The police are sometimes intrigued, other times feel mocked, and their conversation grows increasingly ridiculous. For instance, an officer cautiously suggests, could we explain it to the public like this? The police were just joking around with Pinelli when he suddenly got angry, struggled with them, and accidentally fell out the window. The madman shook his head at this, thinking it was a bad explanation. He said, why not say Pinelli uh, was pretending to be desperate? Actually, he wanted an excuse to jump and deliberately ruin the police's reputation. This logic is way too bizarre. The officer anxiously said, hey, your story is even more absurd than mine. The madman immediately laughed it off. Oh well, how about we try a new story? Ah. The chief and police grew more confused about this judge's intentions. Is he here to help us or to mock us? Ah, just then, a female reporter from a newspaper arrived. The chief wanted to turn her away, but the madman said, if we don't welcome the media when they come, it'll look like we have something to hide. The madman saw the chief's concern. He didn't want outsiders to know a judge was investigating. So the madman once again changed costumes, becoming a captain. Part 4 of the story begins, and the female reporter enters. She came prepared and asked many pointed questions. In response, the madman sometimes defended them, other times deliberately undermined them, layer by layer, exposing the police's true nature. For example, the reporter asked, why didn't the investigation report cover the victim's trajectory through the air when he jumped? Would the trajectory be different if he was already dead before falling? This matters for uncovering the truth. She also asked, why did the police station call an ambulance 5 minutes before he fell? And she asked, why did the victim have bloodstains on his neck? And to these questions, the madman explained that an interrogator lost control and struck the deceased, leaving a mark on his neck. Then, the police found the deceased was dazed from the blow, so they quickly called an ambulance, opened the window, and tilted him out to let him breathe fresh air and recover. Unfortunately, both officers thought the other was holding him, so they both let go, causing him to plummet from the air. Absurd explanations like this came one after another, leaving the police both amused and helpless, forced to let this judge run wild. Just then, Bertozzo, who'd been knocked out earlier, returned holding a bomb, a replica of the one from the agricultural bank bombing case. He said, this bomb won't explode because it doesn't have a detonator. His appearance shifted the discussion from the truth about the anarchist's death to the truth behind the bombing case. The reporter immediately brought up another incident. During the agricultural bank bombing, police found another bomb at a different Milan bank. They detonated it right then. The reporter questioned the police. Why detonate it instead of disarming it? To present as court evidence? Is the police hiding something? At that moment, the madman jumped in, explaining, "Oh dear, the bomb's structure is complex, possibly with hidden traps. Trying to disarm it could cause greater danger." This pleased the police, and Bertozzo echoed, this bomb's really complex. Only pros could make it. Hearing this, the reporter instantly spotted the flaw. She pressed, "Then why does the police insist unarmed anarchist groups made the bomb? Shouldn't you investigate those with professional backgrounds?" She added, "According to stats, out of 173 recent terrorist bombings in Italy, 102 were by neo-Nazis, and most others are neo-Nazi related. Italians know neo-Nazis have close ties with military and police. They're bomb-making experts." Hearing this, the chief was speechless. He expected the madman to deliver a brilliant rebuttal. Who knows? Suddenly, the madman dropped his smooth talking act and said to the reporter in a loud, serious tone, "You're right, the police should indeed go after the neo-Nazis. This government can't be trusted." Um, at this point, the core theme of the play, what Dario Fo most wanted to say, was finally voiced through the madman. The chief heard this and was shocked, shouting repeatedly at the madman, "Oh dear, they're crazy, they're crazy." Uh, this reminded Bertozzo. He recognized that this captain was actually the original madman. He pulled out a pistol, forcing the madman to confess his true identity. The madman wasn't rushed or in denial. He calmly produced his medical certificate and various stolen case files. At this, the chief snapped out of it and screamed about punishing the madman. But the madman picked up the fake bomb and said, "This bomb just lacks a detonator, but I've got a voice-activated one on me. If you trouble me again, I'll blow you all sky high." Faced with this, the chief, officers, and Bertozzo were all dumbfounded. The madman used a fake identity to expose the fake facts from the police, which covered up a real scandal. At that moment in the play, a self-brought detonator turned a silent replica bomb into a real bomb. The truth is about to be awakened. The scandal must be exposed to the world. The madman then pulled out his recorder from his bag. He had recorded all their conversations. He said, "I'm going to duplicate this recording 100 times and send it to party newspapers and government departments to spread the scandal nationwide, worldwide." He said, "This is a real bomb. Only a country that lets scandals fly freely is a true social democracy. Let the people shout, 'We're buried in shit up to our necks, and that's why we must march forward with heads held high.'" Thus, Accidental Death of an Anarchist concluded with the madman's bold declaration. Dario Fo created over 50 satirical plays, one-man farces, black comedies, and absurdist dramas in his lifetime. Among these, the most influential were his political satires. He always used theater as a means to critique current affairs, infusing his creations with clear political stances, criticism, and passion. An Accidental Death of an Anarchist is his masterpiece in political satire. The play is packed with ironic moments, especially after the reporter appears. The madman's performance becomes absolutely mesmerizing. He'd put on a fake mustache, a glass eye with an eye patch over it, and a prosthetic hand covered by a brown glove. But all this elaborate disguise ended up becoming a joke, ultimately exposing the lies. For instance, when the madman sided with the police, he smoothly explained the ambulance issue to the reporter. The officer was so pleased that he excitedly patted the madman, dislodging the fake eye, which fell and rolled away. Another officer picked up the eye and put it in a cup to clean it. Meanwhile, the madman, deep in conversation, casually grabbed the cup to drink and accidentally swallowed the fake eye. A fake eye is like a lie. It can trip you up and make you swallow it. Swallowing the fake eye symbolizes that liars face the consequences of their deceit. Later, when an officer excitedly shook the madman's hand, the prosthetic hand came off. And when the madman stood up, everyone, on stage and off, realized one of his legs was also fake. The officers in chief were stunned while the audience roared with laughter. Each prosthetic mishap followed a lie, pulling the rug from under them again and again. Amid laughter, the audience saw everyone, chief, officers, even the madman, spouting nonsense. But orchestrating this farce was the madman, the ultimate liar. By impersonating different people, he lured the police into lying, then exposed them repeatedly. This fight fire with fire approach created plot twists and powerful satire, using the madman as a clown, playing multiple roles with illogical speech to trap authorities into self-exposure. This artistic approach is Dario Fo's unique genius. He believed theater should engage politics this way, exposing corruption and lies to the world. Still, the play doesn't rashly claim Pinelli was murdered. It reveals the police's cover-up lies, exposing the scandal's truth and a corrupt power system. Dario Fo wants to tell the world that we can't uncover every truth, but we can always doubt those who hold power and control the narrative. In reality, the truth about the anarchist's death remains an unsolved mystery, just like the madman's true identity in the play. Neither the police's explanation nor the court's later ruling could quell doubts. They only fueled more suspicion. After the play caused a sensation, the public's anger kept burning. The officer who led Pinelli's interrogation was constantly under public scrutiny after the incident. On May 17th, 1972, he was shot and killed on his way to work. However, the play's implication that the bombing was carried out by right-wing neo-Nazis to frame anarchists was later confirmed. The Italian court ultimately confirmed that the case was indeed related to neo-Nazis, proving the anarchists innocent. During Italy's chaotic political era, this incident became an outright scandal. Those in power lost all credibility, and the corruption completely eroded public trust. As a radical left-wing playwright, Dario Fo repeatedly stated that given Italy's political corruption, the people needed to launch a true revolution. He believed reform was hopeless. He often went among the public, performing improvisations and giving speeches to help people recognize the authorities' ugliness. However, Accidental Death of an Anarchist isn't just political propaganda. It's a true masterpiece of satirical art. Beneath its farcical surface lies a sharp edge against authoritarianism and corruption. In a politically oppressive era, it gave audiences immense pleasure, encouraging them to maintain strong skepticism toward those in power. In 1997, when the Swedish Academy announced Dario Fo's Nobel Prize, it also hailed Accidental Death of an Anarchist as his most important artistic achievement. In his acceptance speech, Dario Fo said, "As intellectuals as those who take the podium or stage, especially those guiding the youth, our task is not just to teach them how to gesture, how to project their voice, how to use diaphragmatic breathing. Teaching mere technique isn't enough. We must tell them what's happening around them and teach them to narrate their own situations." The master of satire solemnly declares that art that doesn't speak for this era and all of humanity is utterly meaningless. All right, that concludes our interpretation of Accidental Death of an Anarchist for you. The reading notes are below the audio. See you tomorrow.